Former American President Donald Trump has announced that he's going to run for president once again. Now, what we remember about Trump's first and what can be called a short stint as president is that that presidency aroused a lot of feelings and new definitions around what it means to be a patriot, around what it means to be a leader that cares for his people. Trump's presidency was shrouded in controversy, issues of misogyny, issues of racism, and all those issues that we know came around Trump's president. But now he's coming back. And the question I'm asking Professor Herman Manyora today on the show is, what can Africa, what can Kenya learn from Trump's presidency in terms of defining what it means for a leader to be patriotic and to put their country ahead of everything else? Welcome to the discussion today. This is Let's Talk Love, and I'm sitting with Professor Herman Manyora, number one patriot, our resident president here at Nairobi Review, and on the streets, we call him Dr. Love. How you doing, Prof?
Wonderful.
Right, Trump is coming back.
Good.
And I'd like you to help me, and I'd like for you to help me understand the intrigues of that first Trump presidency and this upcoming one, if he wins, because he seems to be very popular. And for those like me on this side who consume liberal American media, Trump was painted as this villain who was not a lover of people, who was not, who did not represent the American spirit. But for those who consume media that is not so leftist, yet from America, platforms like Fox News and other platforms where a big number of what is called silent majority Americans are, Trump was not a villain. He was someone who represented a new birth for America. He represented a lot of positive changes for people who call themselves American citizens. So, looking at our leaders, at our politicians, and at our own foreign and home policies in leadership here in the country, in line, of course, with patriotism and love, what do we learn from Trump's style of leadership?
Only one thing is that a leader should love their country and put their country first. Make
America great
MAGA.
again.
Make America, the MAGA rallies.
Yes, MAGA rally. It's back now and bigger.
Okay.
Yes.
Make America great again. And everything Trump did was about America. And that's why he was loved by many Americans. Of course, there is a tinge of nationalism, a tinge of white superiority with it. But I would go for what Trump was doing. If African presidents put their countries first in the manner in which Trump put America first, this will be a great continent.
Yes?
Yeah, it's a great continent. And I've never blamed Trump for anything. We cannot mess our countries and hope to go and pack our people in America. Let's love our
As
countries.
immigrants.
Let's make our countries functional. Yes. So Trump, the takeaway from Trump is love your country. America first. So for Ruto, should be Kenya first.
Kenya first. Right, and one of the things that Trump was big on was foreign policy, of course. How much America contributed to other people's problems, how much America got involved into issues that were not their own, yes, you know, before they put their own domestic problems ahead. And Trump's ideology was and has been, and not just Trump's, but it seems to be the ideology of the entire GOP party, was that it's time now that Americans refocused their strength into making it easier to be American than creating this narrative of America being a friend of everyone out there. And for me to link the two, before President Kenyatta left office, there was the issue of refugees, Dadaab and Kakuma camps. And one of the things that Kenyatta wanted was to close down those camps. And the argument was the weight of carrying those refugees was just too much on us when we are struggling with more than 20 counties facing starvation and drought. Yet we are going out on a limb to help Somalia, to help all these people coming from outside. And I couldn't help but compare the Trump ideology and the situation we were in with the refugees. How do you see it?
Not quite so. You know, on the one hand, there is a deliberate policy, foreign policy, that takes you across the world, so that American presence is everywhere. And everywhere you go, you don't walk on foot or you don't ride a bicycle. You spend billions of dollars in your foreign policy, in supporting groups and persons and nations. And Trump was saying, look, even ridiculous level, where you support a country like Saudi Arabia or even NATO, but they have enough money to spend elsewhere in the West, and you take your hard-earned money, taxes from Americans, take it to places, and in those places, the people have enough money to squander or support other causes.
So bringing sun to
Or
the beach.
you have so much money and your contribution towards your own defense is zero. So that America cut us for 100% and you have resources. Why can't you contribute towards your own security and strategic existence? That's different from, say, Somalia, where you are dealing with the people who have been displaced because of conflict.
It's different?
It's different because then we are talking about a humanitarian approach to refugees. But again, you can also argue at a higher level that people should not mess their countries. Then they bring the burden to other countries.
Yeah.
Somali people should not behave as if they don't have a problem. The Somali people have a problem. They must address the problem so that if there are Somali refugees, they should go back to the country. Kenya cannot continue to bear burden when the situation is such that the Somali leadership can sort out the mess quickly and people go back home. So you cannot pay so dearly to maintain the refugees and allow people to play around with their politics, with the golden teeth and, you know, patronizing the best hotels in Nairobi and London and Paris, you know, and Switzerland.
Yes.
And then going back home to mess their country, what you see in Southern Sudan.
Yeah,
We
the
can't
leaders
allow that
live
kind
here
of
in
thing.
Nairobi.
We can't allow that kind of thing. That the Sudanese from South Sudan, you'll find them in the best restaurants in town. Then they go home and mess their country. That should not be allowed to happen. People must be told, make Kenya a place your child will live and your grandchild. Yeah.
So
Don't
loving
mess
your
it.
country takes a
Don't
little
mess
bit
it.
of
Then you go to
selfishness.
America as an alien.
Yes.
And then you illegal alien and you want to be beset by Americans. I support Trump.
You start
Go back
calling
to your
yourself
country.
an American.
Go back to your country.
Yes.
Put pressure on your country so that there's good governance in your country. So that's love. There can be no better love than that demonstrated by Trump.
What do you say about this issue of these camps, though Kakuma ended up? Because it was a headache for Uhuru Kenyatta. He was saying it was unsustainable for him. For us as taxpayers, these camps are huge. They are ballooning. They are getting bigger. We are having to bring in people not just from
That's what I'm
Somalia,
saying.
even Ethiopia.
We are talking about people.
What should Ruto do?
You know, there are times or situations in which there is really a humanitarian crisis.
Yes.
That people have to leave their countries or be persecuted, be killed, and so on and so forth, or die from starvation. Then they move out. But situations get to a point where they should be changed. But now, when things can be made bearable and peace can be brought back in a sustainable manner, Somalia can have a functional government, Somalia can have a functional government, but the politicians are still playing cheap politics. So that it's taking longer than it should take for nomads to return in Somalia. That cannot be allowed. No.
It's costing us.
Yes, that cannot be allowed. No, we cannot bear the burden of people who are just playing games with their own politics, with their own security. No, they must be told no. And that's why in the olden days, people like this, you just used to be beaten up by bigger powers. You are just slapped and then you are ruled for some time until you get sense, then you get back to your country.
Now take it.
Yeah, because you cannot give others. But initially, that is a humanitarian issue.
Which we ought to respond to.
Yes, but it cannot last forever.
It can't. No. Yeah, another Trump-like situation that I see us in, Prof, is as a country, as Kenya, we work with our neighbors, let's say the EAC or COMESA or these trade blocs. But it seems that in some situations, as a country, we are more positioned where we are at a better disadvantage economically, but we are having to do business in terms of these tariffs, in terms of what we get from working with countries like Uganda, Tanzania, the EAC. It seems that we are getting a raw deal because by the fact of being ahead of these other countries in these blocks, it seems like it's more of a disadvantage to us than it is an advantage working with these neighbors. And maybe I'm not getting it right. And what I read from this is, yet again, we're in a position where we can say, we can be a little bit selfish with how we relate with our neighbors so that we benefit ourselves more. Do you think there's a raw deal for Kenya in how we trade with our neighbors?
You know, regional cooperation is not easy.
It's hard.
It's hard because you are not operating at the same level. One of the reasons why the East African community broke down in 1977 was because Kenya was thought to be capitalist, number one, and number two, so far ahead that any dealings with the other partner states, Uganda and Tanzania, will always be in the interest of Kenya.
All right.
So it's not always easy. It's even made worse by the fact that other powers would want you not to cooperate very well so that they can benefit from you. So I think it's in the interest of all the East African countries to cooperate and to coexist so that they are not exploited by the West and by China.
Which is the
Uganda
danger.
is Kenya's biggest trading partner. I'm not so convinced that our policies seem to reflect that. Our policy should reflect the fact that Uganda is our biggest trading partner. And we should build on that and find out what is it South Sudan can benefit from Kenya, and Kenya can benefit from South Sudan. DRC now is there. Tanzania and Uganda, Burundi, you know. So, but it's not easy. A regional bloc, anywhere, even EU.
It's hard.
Just a couple of a year or so, 2 years ago, something, I don't know, Britain opted out of the EU. So it's not a simple matter. It's difficult. And the tariffs, whenever there are tariffs, they always bring their challenges. Look at COMESA, for example. There are challenges with COMESA. Like with sugar, it was after some times, you can't protect your sugar industry. Sugar was to come in. We kept asking for postponement.
Yes.
Postponement because sugar from Egypt is so cheap. Sugar, Egypt is part of COMESA. It will be so cheap, we will not grow sugar.
And we have to take it.
Then there are issues of sugar and there are issues of rules of origin. You may think sugar is coming from Uganda, but it has come from Brazil. Then it stops in Uganda. Then it comes here as if it's Ugandan sugar, where these rules of origin are flouted. So it's not a simple matter. It's a very complex matter.
It's tough.
Everywhere in the world, wherever there are talents, between America and Mexico, you know, everywhere, it's not a simple matter. It's a difficult matter that requires a lot of engagement.
And as we went up to the rear, are there situations where countries like ours can opt out of these blocks? Because, again, going back to Trump, we saw him saying that America is going to opt out of some of these regional, NATO, the ICC, they are not part of that.
Yeah, he did. In fact, that
it wasn't working for them.
That trade area, I've forgotten what name it was called, he opted out of it.
The free trade thing.
Yeah, Kenya can opt out of it. But normally when you opt out, you lose.
You lose more than you gain.
Britain is now regretting.
Britain is losing for Brexit.
Britain is not very happy about exit from EU. But normally the worst part of it, if Kenya were to opt out, it will not be because it is in Kenyan interest. It will be because foreigners will be pushing us to do so.
Puppeteers.
To abandon our brothers. So that the East African community doesn't go towards the ultimate, which is complete integration.
And a common currency?
Yeah, the common currency.
That would be good.
Avoiding that because it will be such a powerful bloc. Population-wise, in a couple of years, the East African region will have more people than Europe.
But won't our neighbors pull us
down? That's a huge market. That's a very huge market.
It's a huge market.
Yeah, and then progressively, this population is not just youthful, it's becoming more and more educated. So it's a huge market in every respect.
So you have more potential than even some of the biggest economies already.
So these Westerners, Russia, America, Europe, and so on, will do everything to ensure that we don't cooperate with our brothers and sisters.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's finish on this note. Is it in Kenya's interest for us to get a leader like Trump, maybe not a white supremacist, maybe not a KKK member, but someone who stands tall and says, make Kenya great again, or some rhetoric of that sort, Kenya first.
If I was president,
you know, everything else goes aside.
If I become president, that's what I'll do. It will be Kenya first. Anybody dealing with Kenya will have to know Kenya comes first.
What would that look like? What would such a leader, such a politician in Kenya look? How would we look different?
It will be simple. We have friends and brothers and sisters across the world, and we must relate with them as friends, brothers, and sisters. There will be no big brother. Just simple that.
No big brother.
No. Everything will be in the interest of Kenya. Everything. You come to do a contract here, it must be well measured. We must do everything well. Costing, conditions of the contracts must be met.
Yeah.
Technology transfer. You cannot build a road in this country for 20 years and yet we cannot even build 10 kilometers of a similar road. Every time you do a job, we must learn something from that job, so that ultimately we are able to do it, which is called technology transfer. Simple things like those. I would ensure that Kenya comes first in every respect and in every aspect.
Kenya first. And would that mean
there can be no greater love.
The West?
There can be no greater love. East or West is not important.
Yeah?
What's important? You want to deal with Kenya? Yes.
Yeah. On our terms?
You want our minerals? Yes. Are they ours? Yes. Please. The only dealings we shall have with you is one that reflects that reality on the ground, that this is Kenyan asset. Mm-hmm. This is where God found it proper to put that mineral resource. With titanium, God wanted it in Kwale for the Kenyan people.
It is Aguas.
Yes.
Is it how China and other countries rose?
That's how they do it, their own countries.
That's how they rose?
Yeah, because if you put your country first, if Africa put itself first, we have the most youthful population, we have the fastest growing population. Europe and Japan and the rest have very aging populations. And therefore, in the next 30 years, Africa should be the giant of the world.
In terms of everything?
Yeah, but Africa must first love itself. African presidents must put their countries first, and then put Africa first. Mm-hmm. It is much more expensive to travel between Nairobi and Ghana than to go to Dubai.
That's ridiculous.
You go to Morocco, you have to go to Middle East first before you come back to Morocco. You know, we can't have that kind of
ridiculous.
Yeah.
And let's finish. But I have an itch that I'm wanting to scratch. Raila Odinga, would you say if he was ever president, if it happened or if ever it would happen, he would be that kind of leader who puts Kenya first and puts that kind of policy? I just had to ask.
I think Raila has fought so much for this country. I will find it very difficult to believe he would have been doing that if he didn't love this country. You can't say that of people who have just come on the scene and want to be power.
Yeah.
And power and they get it. Maybe they love the country, but you have nothing to go by. You have to wait until they run government for 5-10 years. Oh, yeah, Kumbe Ruto loved this country. You have to wait. But for Raila, you don't have to wait. He's put everything down. He's put his life, family, everything in line for this country. That can only be a person who loves the country.
There's nothing I can add on that. Correct. Thank you, Prof. All right, folks, that's the discussion we've had today on Donald Trump coming back for the presidency and Africa, Kenya, needing selfish leaders, so to speak. Until I see you next time, my name is Kimathi. This is Let's Talk Love.